How does the Castle Trust protect the assets from lawsuits?
Welcome to Barry's Bites. Please join our host, attorney and financial advisor Chris Barry.
We have different types of trusts. We have revocable trusts that avoid probate. We also have asset protection trusts, like a Castle Trust. In the past, we were really concerned about like estate taxes, where we would set up these kind of more complicated types of trusts to protect against estate taxes, where if you had more than $600,000 of assets and you passed away, the government could now swipe in and take a portion of those assets because the estate tax exemption was only at $600,000. Well, now it's at $24 million. And so it was growing over that time. So it was at 600,000 and then $1 million and $1.5 million and $3.5 million and $5 million and then $10 million. And now it's at $24 million. So if you have less than $24 million, you don't have to worry about estate taxes. And a lot of people initially looked at trusts just as a way to avoid estate taxes. But in reality, trusts can do more than that. They can avoid probate, which a basic revocable trust does. But then there's more complicated trusts, like a Castle Trust. And so the Castle Trust, the big benefit that I think a lot of my clients, or why it appeals to them, is that it protects against long-term care costs. It builds in asset protection to protect against long-term care costs, where if we have the assets sitting in the trust for a period of 5 years, because Medicaid has this look-back period, then everything inside of the trust is protected from that nursing home or Medicaid spend down, because Medicaid looks back 5 years. So you can have Medicaid pay this base level of care, and then you have a pot of resources available to pay for additional services. So that's a big benefit of the Castle Trust. But it also is an asset protection trust, meaning if, let's say, you get in a car accident, of course, you have insurance and you might have an umbrella policy, but they could come after you personally. But what the Castle Trust also does is that it shields your assets. So for purposes of nursing home creditors, of debts, of creditors, of lawsuits, the Castle Trust is a separate entity. Where it's not a separate entity is for tax purposes. So you pay taxes the way you normally do. So this isn't a more complicated trust to avoid estate taxes, because then we would have to give up control. You'd have to have a separate tax ID number, that type of thing. But it still is a separate entity as it relates to your assets with regards to asset protection from lawsuits. So a lot of business owners, this appeals to them. I have clients that have real estate and they put their assets into the Castle Trust because they're concerned about like creditors and lawsuits, because the world's a lot more litigious. And that's where the Castle Trust does build in another level of asset protection, because the assets aren't in Jim and Jane's name. They're in the Jim and Jane Trust, which for creditor protection, it's a separate entity. Now, if you don't manage it correctly, there always could be some bad fact cases, but we've had the Castle Trust protect against divorces before. So it's tested. And again, this isn't something that I just came up with. This type of planning has been around since the 90s. And it's the difference between estate planning. Estate planning is what happens if you pass away, versus elder law, which is what happens if you don't pass away and you continue to age and face all the issues that go along with aging, and protecting you from the threats. And one of those threats is long-term care costs. And another threat is how litigious society is. So yes, a Castle Trust does protect your assets if there was a lawsuit.